He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be.
Welcome to the NCE Study Guide.
It's really great to be here for this one.
Yeah, so if you are listening to this right now, I'm going to make a pretty safe bet.
Let me guess. Flashcards.
Oh, absolutely. You are probably surrounded by flashcards, maybe an empty coffee cup or, 3, and you're deep in the trenches of prepping for the National Counselor Examination.
Yeah, that is a very familiar scene.
And based on the feedback we hear all the time, you are likely staring at the ethics section of your study prep with this very specific, very heavy kind of dread.
It is the universal NCE experience, honestly. There's this looming perception that the ethics section is just that it's designed to trick you.
Right.
People think they need to, memorize an entire law library, or that they're going to be tested on some super obscure subsection of the code that literally nobody uses in real life.
Yeah, it feels really high stakes.
Because it is. I mean, in practice, a slip-up here isn't just a wrong answer on a Scantron. It's a lawsuit or a lost license.
Exactly. It's the fear of professional ruin distilled into a multiple-choice question.
That's a great way to put it.
But when we dive into the structure of Module 1.1.1 today, there's a massive pivot in how we need to view this section. Ethics is actually arguably the most predictable part of the exam.
It absolutely is, and that's what we really want to hammer home today.
Unlike the clinical scenarios where, symptoms can be subjective or treatment plans can vary based on theory, ethics has a true North Star.
The exam isn't trying to trick you. It's just trying to see if you can navigate using that North Star.
The phrase that kept coming up as we put this deep dive together was conceptual fluency. And I want to start right there because that feels like the anchor for this entire discussion. It's not about rote memorization, is it?
No, not at all. If you sit down and try to memorize the 2014 ACA Code of Ethics word for word, you will fail.
You'll just burn out.
We'll burn out before you even reach the clinical sections. Conceptual fluency means understanding the actual architecture of the rules.
The why behind them.
Exactly. If you understand the intent, the why, you can predict the what for almost any question they throw your way.
So that is our mission for this deep dive. We are going to strip the ACA Code of Ethics down to its studs. We aren't just reciting rules today. We are building a framework so that when you see a test question, you know exactly which lever to pull.
I love that.
And we are calling this module the Ethics Blueprint, how the ACA Code can make or break your NCE score.
Perfect. And we're focusing strictly on the foundation today, Module 1.1.1.
Let's start with the document itself, the 2014 ACA Code of Ethics. It is so easy to gloss over the history and just jump straight to the rules, but understanding the history actually helps you eliminate wrong answers.
It really does.
Why does history matter for a multiple-choice test in the modern era?
It matters because of professional identity. You have to remember that counseling as a profession is kind of a middle child.
A middle child.
Yeah, in the mid-20th century, counseling was fighting for a seat at the table. It was stuck between the medical model of psychology on one side and the systemic social focus of social work on the other.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
So the Code of Ethics wasn't just a rule book. It was a flag in the ground. It was a way of the profession saying, this is who we are, and this is exactly how we differ from doctors and social workers.
It was a declaration of independence.
Exactly. And that identity is incredibly specific.
There are 3 key descriptors that really define the counseling approach: wellness, developmental, and holistic.
Those are the magic words. And here's exactly how that helps you on the test.
Lay it on us.
If you see a multiple choice answer that focuses heavily on pathology like what is broken or diseased, in the client that is a psychology-based answer.
Right.
It might be clinically correct if you were taking a medical board exam in a hospital, but it is highly likely to be the wrong answer for the NCE.
That is a fantastic heuristic for test takers. If the answer sounds too medical or too focused on just treating a disease, be skeptical.
Be very skeptical. Counseling focuses on wellness. We are about optimizing life. We view problems as developmental stages, like getting stuck in a normal life cycle phase, rather than permanent illnesses.
And we look at the client holistically. The ACA Code was literally written to protect that specific worldview.
Yes. And the 2014 revision really modernized this. It's not some dusty document from the 1950s anymore.
There was a massive shift toward multicultural competence and technology.
Huge. The 2014 code basically drew a line in the sand and said, you cannot be an ethical counselor if you are not a culturally competent one.
It's no longer just a nice-to-have add-on.
Right. It's core to the practice. And regarding technology, social media, virtual sessions, the code had to evolve to explicitly state that, yes, professional boundaries exist in the digital world too.
So the big mindset shift for you listening right now is this. The NCE is not a trivia contest.
No, it is not.
They are not going to ask you in which year was the code most recently revised. They're going to give you a messy, realistic human situation.
It's an application exam. They want to know if you can take that messy human situation and apply a clean ethical framework without panicking.
And to do that, we need to talk about the pillars. We refer to them as the Big Six. These are the moral principles that underpin every single standard in the entire book.
Think of these as the engine under the hood.
Yeah.
Even if you completely blank and forget the specific code number during the test, if you can trace the problem back to one of these 6 principles, you can almost always derive the correct answer.
Let's run through them, but I want to push past just the dictionary definitions and talk about how they actually show up in NCE test questions.
I did, yeah.
First up is arguably the most famous one, autonomy.
Autonomy is the commitment to the client's right to self-determination. It's the core belief that the client is the expert on their own life. We do not fix them. We facilitate their choices.
Here is where I see students get tripped up, though. What if the client is making a terrible choice?
Terrible how?
Not a dangerous one, just a really stupid one. Like, say they want to quit a stable, high-paying job to become a street mime, and they have absolutely zero backup plan.
That is the classic autonomy trap.
The autonomy trap.
Yes. If the client's choice doesn't physically harm themselves or others, you have to respect it. The test wants to see you empower the client, even if you personally think their strategy is a disaster.
So you cannot play the savior.
Never play the savior on the NCE. If you choose the answer that says, persuade the client to keep their job, you are violating autonomy and you'll get the question wrong.
Got it. Okay, next is beneficence.
Simply put, this is working for the good of the individual and society. Is your intervention actually helpful? Are you actively adding value to their life? It is the active promotion of well-being.
Which is the flip side of number 3, non-maleficence.
Do no harm. This is the absolute bedrock of medical and counseling ethics, going all the way back to Hippocrates.
And on the exam, this is often the tiebreaker, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
If an intervention is potentially helpful, meaning it has beneficence but it carries a significant risk of harm, thereby violating non-maleficence, you almost always default to avoiding harm.
Number 4 is justice.
This one is tricky because people constantly confuse justice with equality. Justice does not mean treating every single client exactly the same. It means treating them equitably.
Can you give us a concrete example of the difference? Because that trips people up.
Sure. Let's look at fees. If you charge a wealthy client your full rate, but you offer a sliding scale to a client who just lost their job, you are not treating them equally in terms of dollars.
But you are acting with justice.
Exactly. You are fostering equitable access to care. The NCE loves questions about pro bono work and fee structures that lean heavily on this principle.
That's a crucial distinction. Okay, number 5, fidelity.
Fidelity is about faith and promises. It's the social contract of the therapy room.
Like keeping your word.
Yes. If you say this room is a safe space, you have to keep that promise. It includes being on time, keeping appointments, and most importantly, maintaining confidentiality. It is all about trust.
And finally, number 6, veracity.
Truthfulness. It seems obvious, but this comes up a lot in diagnosis questions.
How?
Well, you cannot upcode a diagnosis. Say, diagnosing someone with major depressive disorder when they really only meet the criteria for an adjustment disorder, just to get their insurance to pay for the sessions.
That violates veracity.
Completely. You have to be honest about what you were seeing and what you were doing.
Okay, so we have these 6 noble principles, and in a perfect world, they all align perfectly, and we all go home happy.
But the NCE does not test you on a perfect world.
Exactly. It tests you on what I like to call the cage match.
The cage match. That is the best way to put it. The absolute hardest questions are when 2 of these principles enter the ring and only 1 leaves.
There's a classic scenario for this. You have a client who tells you a secret.
Okay.
Autonomy says, respect their privacy, it's their story to tell. Fidelity says, keep your promise of confidentiality, but the secret implies they might actually hurt someone.
Right.
Now you have non-maleficence, do no harm entering the fight.
This is the core conflict in all of counseling. And for the purpose of the exam, there is a strict hierarchy. Non-maleficence, specifically regarding physical safety, almost always wins.
The right to safety overrides the right to privacy.
Every single time.
So if I'm staring at 4 multiple choice answers, and one protects privacy but risks safety, and another breaks privacy but ensures safety.
You break privacy. The NCE wants to verify that you aren't so blindly committed to being trustworthy via fidelity that you let someone get physically hurt, because that would violate non-maleficence.
You acknowledge the autonomy, but you act on the safety.
Precisely.
We will come back to that safety hierarchy in the strategy section in just a bit, because it's a huge point. But before that, I want to clarify a distinction that is a major pitfall for test takers, the difference between ethics and morality.
Oh, this is massive. In casual conversation, we use them completely interchangeably. We say, oh, that's immoral or that's unethical, and we generally mean the same thing.
Right.
But on the exam, there are two completely different operating systems.
Break down the difference for us.
Morality is internal. It is deeply personal. It comes from your culture, your religion, how your grandma raised you, your own gut feelings. It is what you believe is right in your own soul.
And ethics.
Ethics are external. They are professional. They are the agreed-upon rules of the counseling group, regardless of what your grandma taught you.
So let's apply this to a test question. A client comes in, and they are living a lifestyle that goes directly against the counselor's personal, religious, or moral beliefs.
Very common scenario.
Maybe it's a relationship structure you don't agree with, or a reproductive choice you wouldn't personally make.
The test will definitely present a scenario just like this. And what the question is really testing is, can you bracket?
Bracketing meaning setting your own personal stuff aside.
Yes. If you pick the answer that is based on your morality, you fail the question. The answer must align with the ACA code. Autonomy and justice dictate that you treat that client with absolute competence and respect.
And if you can't?
If you can't, the ethical failure is on you, not the client.
So the big test tip here is, if you feel a yuck factor or a personal moral hesitation when you're reading a question, that is a giant red flag.
Huge red flag.
You have to check your personal feelings at the door and look strictly at what the code says.
Professional identity supersedes personal opinion. Always. That is the golden rule of the exam.
Okay, moving on to the how-to. We have the principles, we've checked our morals at the door. Now we're faced with a complex dilemma. The NCE specifically references a decision-making model to handle this.
Yes, the Forrester, Miller, and Davis model. It's basically the gold standard endorsed by the ACA.
It's a 7-step process, and I used to think, why do I need to memorize a list of steps? I'll just solve the problem. But the order actually matters for the exam, doesn't it?
It matters immensely, mostly because it prevents panic.
Yeah.
The first step is simply identify the problem. Is this actually an ethical dilemma? Or is it a legal issue? Or just a clinical disagreement?
Sometimes we freak out about ethics when it's just a clinical strategy issue.
Exactly. And step 2 is apply the ACA code.
Why is that step 2 and not, like, step 7?
Because you want to save time. If the code specifically says, do not have sexual relations with a current client, you don't need to brainstorm or weigh consequences. The answer is printed in black and white. You just stop there.
Right. You don't need a deep philosophical debate if there is a clear rule.
But if it is gray, you move on. Determine the nature of the dilemma. Generate potential courses of action. Step 4 is essentially brainstorming.
And step 5 is crucial. Consider the consequences.
This is where you have to play the movie forward. If I report this colleague, what happens to their clients? If I don't report them, what happens to the profession?
Then you evaluate and finally implement. It seems academic, but here is a major cheat code for the exam.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
There's one specific action that, if it appears in the answer choices, is statistically highly likely to be correct.
You were talking about consultation.
Yes. Consult with a supervisor. Consult with a peer. Seek legal counsel. Why is the exam so obsessed with us asking for help?
Because the NCE is utterly terrified of the lone wolf counselor.
The lone wolf.
Yes. Professional isolation is the breeding ground for ethical violations. When you are alone, you rationalize things. When you consult, you are accountable.
So if I'm stuck between 2 answers on test day, and one is take immediate action X, and the other is consult with a supervisor regarding action X.
Consult is the safer bet almost every time. It demonstrates that you recognize the limits of your own wisdom. It shows you are collaborative and careful. The exam rewards caution over cowboy heroics.
That leads us perfectly into the high-yield strategies. We have organized these into a sort of hierarchy of answers. We already established the very top of the pyramid. Safety.
Safety is the absolute trump card. imminent danger to self or others. If that is present, you act fast and you act to protect.
Confidentiality evaporates.
Evaporates. That is the only time you move fast and bypass consultation if necessary.
What about those first step questions? You know the ones. You suspect a colleague is behaving unethically. What do you do first?
Oh, this is a classic trap. Everyone wants to say, report them to the board immediately. They want to be the ethics police.
But that's usually wrong, isn't it?
Unless there is direct, immediate harm occurring to a client, the ACA code actually requires you to attempt an informal resolution first.
Ah.
So the correct answer is usually speak to the colleague directly or clarify the situation.
So don't go nuclear as your first move.
Exactly. Remediation is always preferred over punishment in the counseling world.
Another big concept is restrictiveness. This usually applies to client care settings.
Right. We always choose the least restrictive environment. If a client is depressed, we don't hospitalize them unless we absolutely have to. We try intensive outpatient first. We try voluntary commitment before involuntary.
It goes back to autonomy.
Yes. The exam wants to see that you value the client's freedom and that you only infringe upon it as a last resort.
And then there's the paperwork. We've been calling it the unsexy hero of the NCE.
Documentation. Let me tell you, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen.
The exam loves it.
The exam adores answers that include and document the rationale.
Yeah.
It protects you legally, and it is a fundamental ethical duty.
Yeah.
If you make a risky clinical call, you better have a solid paper trail explaining exactly why.
I want to zoom in on one specific scenario we uncovered in the deep dive. It's awkward, but it is super high yield for the test.
Yes.
The attraction scenario.
Yes. Countertransference.
The question will be something like, you realize you are sexually attracted to your client. The test doesn't ask if this is okay. It just assumes it happens because we are human beings. The question is, what is the ethical response?
And the trap answer they always provide is refer the client immediately.
Why is that wrong? Honestly, it feels like the safe thing to do. Get them away from me.
It feels safe for you, the counselor.
Yeah.
But think about the client. You are essentially abandoning them because of your internal feelings.
Wow.
That is not beneficence. That is self-preservation at the client's expense.
So what is the actual right answer?
Consult and supervise. You take it to your clinical supervisor. You work through your own feelings. You reestablish clinical boundaries. You document the process.
And you only refer if you can't resolve it.
Exactly. You only refer if, after all that work, you realize you absolutely cannot be objective anymore.
Yeah.
But the very first step is managing your own stuff, not just dumping the client.
Now, just to be absolutely clear, because the NCE is very absolute on this, what about actually acting on the attraction?
Hard line, non-negotiable. Sexual relationships with current clients are always unethical, period. It is the absolute quickest way to lose your license.
And what about former clients?
There's a mandatory waiting period, usually 5 years, according to the ACA.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, the code dictates that you have to prove that the relationship isn't exploitative based on the past power dynamic.
It sounds like a minefield.
It is a massive minefield. The exam answer is essentially, just don't do it.
Good advice for the test and just good advice for life. Don't date the client.
Indeed.
So we have covered the history, the big six, the cage match between those principles, the decision-making model, and the common traps. If you had to distill all of this down to one core mindset for the listener today, what would it be?
I'd say the NCE is really asking one fundamental question with every ethics item. Do you think like a counselor?
And what does thinking like a counselor look like in practice?
It means you aren't reacting emotionally to the prompt. You are reacting systematically. You are prioritizing the client's welfare over your own comfort. You are seeking consultation rather than acting alone.
Professional identity?
Yes. If you stay in that specific professional identity headspace, you stop guessing at the answers and you start knowing them.
And that is how you pass.
That is the game.
This was a really solid foundation, but we kept hitting up against one major topic that we didn't fully unpack today because it's just too big for one sitting. That is our next deep dive. We are going to take apart confidentiality, privileged communication, and the famous Tarasov case regarding the duty to warn. It is the steel frame that holds this entire ethics blueprint together.
It is the most litigated area in our entire field, so you know for a fact it's going to be heavily represented on the exam.
You definitely won't want to miss that one.
Yeah.
Now, if this deep dive helped you lower your blood pressure a little bit regarding the ethics section, please give the show a 5-star rating. It really helps other students find these guides when they need them most.
And remember, you can join our Patreon to gain access to the full growing library of study modules.
Yes, we cover the entire spectrum of the NCE core competencies.
Plus, we just added some really great guided meditations specifically designed for NCE test anxiety to help you visualize success.
Any final thought for the road before we wrap?
Just this. Don't study just to pass a test. Study to internalize the why.
I love that.
Because when you are sitting in that chair across from a real human being in crisis, you won't have time to look up a code. If you internalize the spirit of these ethics right now, the what do I do becomes instinct. That is what makes you a truly great counselor, not just a licensed one.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We will see you in the next module.
1, 2, 3.